Picture this a night so cold the stars feel brittle, wind howling across the plains like a pack of wolves that never sleeps. Inside a tipi made of buffalo hide, a small fire flickers soft, steady, alive. A mother wraps her child tighter under a fur blanket. An elder turns the wood, careful not to let the flame die. Outside, the world is white and cruel. Inside, it's heartbeat and breath. Now pause for a second. We sleep under roofs, sealed tight heaters, humming all night, and still we shiver. They had nothing but firehide and knowledge older than memory. No thermostat, no insulation, no electric comfort. Just people who learned to outthink the cold itself. So here's the question. How did they turn a thin hide tent into a warm cocoon? When winter itself was trying to kill them, let's step inside the teepee and see 7 tricks that kept them alive. The storm outside roars, but inside that teepee, there's movement. A man leans forward, hands out, feeding a handful of twigs into a shallow pit of fire. The light flickers over his face, gold against the shadows of hide walls. That flame is everything. It's not big, not loud, just steady. Too much fire and the smoke fills the tent. Too little and the family wakes up frozen stiff. So he watches, breath by breath, spark by spark. The fire pit is no accident. They carved it 6 inches deep, a small pocket that draws heat upward and keeps the smoke from pooling. Above it, smoke flaps, 2 clever cuts of hide that work like a living lung. Open them to pull smoke out, close them to trap the heat, adjust them with the wind, and the whole teepee breathes like a living creature. Down low, tiny vents let cold air slip in at ground level. That air feeds the fire while warm air rises and escapes through the top. A perfect cycle, primitive HVAC, powered by instinct and patience. But this system doesn't run itself. Someone's always awake, every night, adding wood, shifting flaps, keeping the draft alive. It's quiet work, sacred almost, because one mistake could turn warmth into smoke or sleep into suffocation. And yet, they did it. No alarms, no switches, no blueprints. They learned to read the wind, to balance fire and breath, to make warmth dance on the edge of danger. They didn't invent heating, they invented harmony. When you understand the wind, you don't need a heater. The fire may warm the air, but the real enemy hides below. That frozen ground steals heat faster than wind ever could. Lie down on bare earth, and in a few hours you're colder than a banker's handshake. The old tribes knew this. They didn't sleep on the ground, they built against it. First came the willow mats, woven thick, laid tight a natural carpet that trapped tiny pockets of air. Air, after all, is insulation's oldest friend. On top of that went dry prairie grass, layered so dense it felt like a field turned inside out. And finally, buffalo hides, fur side up, leather side down, turning body heat into something worth keeping. But here's where it gets clever. When the cold bit hardest, they added heated stones, smooth river rocks warmed by the fire, wrapped in hides, then buried beneath the grass layer. Slow release heat, nature's version of a heated mattress. No cords, no switches, no risk of rolling over a plug. Imagine lying there, the snow howling outside the floor beneath you, radiating soft warmth, like the memory of sunlight. Children curl up close, parents form a wall around them, and for a few hours the teepee becomes a cocoon, half shelter, half miracle. They didn't study thermodynamics. They felt it. They read the land, read the cold, and learned how to make the ground itself work for them. No tools, no blueprints, just hands, instinct, and wisdom carved by survival. That floor wasn't fancy, but it saved lives. Outside, the wind screams. Inside, the fire glows low, steady breathing. And around that fire, bodies shift quietly through the night. They didn't scatter like we do today, each in separate beds, each wrapped in personal comfort. No, they formed a circle, a living, breathing shape of survival. The children and elders slept closest to the fire, the fragile hearts of the circle. Behind them, the parents and older siblings curved around backs to the cold wall of hide. one ring of life protecting another, each heartbeat adding to the warmth, each breath feeding the rhythm of the tent. It wasn't just cozy, it was geometry. Perfect design born from instinct, not blueprints. The teepee itself worked like a natural amplifier fire at the center heat, radiating evenly family arranged to capture every bit of it. Even their blankets were shared, a single sheet of buffalo hide draped over all ceiling in the collective warmth. And you know what's funny? Modern science would call that efficient thermal distribution. They just called it sleeping close. Through the night, someone would stir, adjust a hide, add a log. The circle tightened, relaxed, tightened again, like lungs exhaling warmth and drawing in safety. They didn't need technology, they had trust. Imagine that a storm raging outside and inside a family breathing in unison. The fire crackles, the snow hisses against the hide, and somehow everyone stays warm. Not because of insulation, not because of physics, but because of love in formation. Warmth wasn't an accident. It was family. At 30 below, even inside a teepee, the cold doesn't ask permission. It seeps through hides, through blankets, through skin. The fire can only reach so far. Beyond that, your body is on its own. That's when the elders reached for something unexpected. Not wool, not fur, fat. Buffalo, fat bear, greased deer, tallow, whatever the hunt had given that week. They melted it down near the fire, thick and golden, then mixed it with ash from last night's embers. Black paste, slick, smoky. It didn't look beautiful, but it worked like armor. When they smeared it on their hands, their faces, their necks, a thin film formed a barrier between flesh and frost. The fat trapped a layer of warm air, and the ash, full of fine carbon, absorbed the fire's heat and held it like a slow ember. The result: no cracked skin, no frostbite, no frozen lips when you smiled. It was survival skincare, centuries before moisturizers were a thing. Primitive, sure. Effective, absolutely. And it wasn't just vanity, it was ritual. Parents smeared the mixture on children before sleep, pressing warm palms to cold cheeks, each motion saying, "You'll live through this night." Science today might call it thermal insulation with carbon retention. They just called it staying alive. They didn't have fancy lotions. They had lard ash and courage. And somehow it was enough. So next time you complain about dry skin in winter, remember these people turned smoke and fat into survival armor. Not pretty, but alive. When the temperature hit 30 below, even buffalo hides started to lose the fight. The wind sliced through every layer, biting deep enough to burn. Inside the teepee, the fire did its best, but it couldn't reach every corner, so they built warmth by hand. Literally. While one adult tended the fire, another prepared the stones. Smooth river rocks chosen for their weight and patience. They were laid near the flames, heated until they whispered with cracks of steam. Then wrapped in thick hide or woven grass, they were tucked beneath bedding around feet between knees near a child's back. Little suns hidden in the dark. Their heat lasted for hours. Slow, steady, alive. But the body itself needed armor. The air was dry, cruel, relentless. So they used what they had: fat and ash. Buffalo tallow mixed with charcoal dust, rubbed into skin until it glistened like oiled leather. It trapped warmth, blocked wind, and when mixed with smoke scent, it turned skin into a kind of natural shield, one that smelled like survival itself. Not pleasant, not pretty, but effective, always effective. So while today we reach for electric blankets and space heaters, they reached for stones, fire, and instinct. And somehow they stayed warm through nights that could freeze steel. Because in the teepee, warmth wasn't a luxury. It was a science of touch timing and trust. Smelled like smoke, felt like life. There were nights when the wind wasn't just cold, it was alive. Howling, clawing, pushing against the teepee walls like a living beast. The hides shook, the poles groaned, and if you didn't know what you were doing, one gust could steal every ounce of heat you had. That's when instinct turned into architecture. They didn't fight the storm, they shaped it. When the blizzard came, families grabbed shovels, hands, anything they had. They piled snow around the base of the teepee, high and tight. A wall of white hugging the tent like a seal of survival. That layer of packed snow blocked the wind, stopped the drafts, and trapped precious warmth inside. The teepee, once fragile, became a fortress, an igloo made of hide. Up top, they played another trick. Smoke flaps, the twin vents at the crown, became the control center, turned them into the wind, and the storm's pressure pulled the smoke cleanly out, turned them away, and the air inside stayed calm and warm. Every flap movement mattered. It was engineering done with rope bone and instinct. By morning, snow had covered the tent completely, leaving only a faint curl of smoke rising from the top. Inside, the fire still burned. The air still breathed. The people still slept. They didn't see the snow as the enemy. They used it. They turned it into insulation, into protection, into life. It's funny, modern houses collapse under too much snow. But a teepee, it gets stronger. Because cold wasn't their opponent. It was their building block. At the coldest hour of the night, when the fire burned low and the snow outside whispered like sand, survival came down to something invisible. Breath. See, when it gets that cold, your body panics. It speeds up your breathing, pulls in icy air, and dumps out warmth you can't afford to lose. Every exhale carries away heat. Every gasp drains the little moisture left in your lungs. You don't freeze in a second, you freeze one careless breath at a time. But the old tribes knew the secret: slow down, breathe less, live more. They curled up tight like commas in the sentence of the night, faces covered with hides or hands, noses tucked into fur. They inhaled through their noses slow and shallow, keeping the air warm before it ever reached the chest. Their bodies formed small clusters, each person angled sideways toward another, sharing heat without even moving. Inside those circles, breathing wasn't just automatic, it was strategy. The warm air from one person's exhale became the next person's inhale, little microclimates of warmth built from lungs and trust. And it worked. Their breath turned frost to fog. Their rhythm kept the cold from finding its way in. It was survival powered by patience. No gadgets, no oxygen masks, just timing, control, awareness. Science calls it thermoregulation and humidity retention. They called it sleeping right, because the body, when treated gently, becomes its own fire. And maybe that's the quietest lesson of all. Warmth doesn't start outside you. It begins here with one steady breath. Warmth begins within. Morning comes slowly. The wind is quiet now. Snow piles high around the teepee, glowing blue in the dawn. From the top, a thin trail of smoke curls into the pale sky, proof that life made it through the night. Inside, the fire sighs. Children stretch beneath layers of hide. An elder stirs the coals, not to start a blaze, but just enough to keep the story warm. Because warmth wasn't built by wood or hides, it was built by rhythm, patience, and love. The same rhythm of breath that matched the storm. The same patience that shaped snow into walls. The same love that turned a family into a furnace. We have electric blankets now. Thermostats that blink, apps that promise comfort at a click. They had none of that. All they carried was old knowledge, and that knowledge weighed less than a breath, but kept them alive. So here's the question: could you make it through one night in a teepee with nothing but fire breath and family? Or would you freeze before the lesson began? Next time, we'll see how the Vikings fought the same cold, not with hides, but with stone.